Alright, welcome back to yet another delightful episode of the Cosmic Queer Podcast. This is episode 30, somehow. I'm super glad you're here, super grateful that you're here, and if you have time to listen to my podcast and you're looking for more, I urge you to support one of or all of the 5 Indigenous podcasts that I have listed and linked in my show notes. You should be able to just click right on them and go to their platforms, respectively, and I'm going to name them right now. So, the All My Relations podcast, Well for Future, Call Her Auntie, the Matriarch Movement, and the Urban Native Era podcast. These were all listed by Kendra Jessie, originally on TikTok, who is also linked in TikTok, or in TikTok, linked in my show notes if you want to go check out her page as well. She is an Indigenous creator, and she is the person who gave me that list, so I wanted to amplify that as much as I can. Whew. So, we've had a full moon eclipse extravaganza this week. The longest eclipse in however fucking long, it was 6 hours. And a lot of dominance on the fixed signs. There's been a lot of discomfort rumbling around for fixed sign placements, so if you have any of those would be Taurus, Scorpio, Aquarius, and Leo. I'm dominantly ruled by fixed signs in my chart, so it's just been a hell of an uncomfortable ride for me. But I'm running with it, I'm rolling with it, riding the wave. It's gonna be okay, we're gonna make it. So if you've been feeling really uncomfortable and just like everything is like breaking down, it's so that you can have the biggest comeback ever, and you're gonna be slingshotting forward very soon. I'm very excited for you, and yeah, welcome back to the show. Super glad you're here. Today we're going to be talking about some super important updates from Northern BC, as well as the just general the land defenders updates that have been going on. I have some of that linked in my stories on Instagram right now if you want to find some more accounts that are on there, as well as I have a whole bunch of information linked in the show notes for you to check out, so please go take a peek at those. Everything should be pretty user-friendly and linked, so you should be able to just pop directly over to the respective platforms. So we're going to be talking about Northern BC, and we're also going to be having a chat about Imposter Syndrome, including its very sinister origins, which rhymes with hysteria, and what that can look like for me, for you, as well as some strategies that I've found helpful, even some questions that have helped me reframe where I'm coming from when it feels like I'm just frozen, as well as like the executive dysfunction that can come with Imposter Syndrome when folks who have neurodivergence are experiencing some of those traits. My goal with this episode is to hopefully let you off the hook about any guilt that you're holding on to that comes along with imposter syndrome and tends to compound its effects or keep you stuck. And before we get into that, I've got a couple of updates about the show to share, and then I'm going to share about Northern BC. So for the show, I've been evaluating my energy levels over the past several moon cycles, and I've noticed that I struggle really hard with making new moon episodes. Part of my excuse is that I'm ruled by the moon, so when the moon is dark and waning, so is my energy. My chart ruler is Cancer, is the moon, so very much dominant for me, but I find that the other part of me is the executive dysfunction and the neurodivergent part of me that wants to be like oppositional defiant and push against the task because I've given myself too many tasks. So I'm trying to trim back my energy and make sure that I'm putting it forward in the most meaningful way. So I've decided that rather than forcing myself to produce more and like make all the things, I'm going to instead honor how the fuck I feel. I know, groundbreaking, and use the entire lunar cycle to develop and produce one excellent episode per month to be released around the full moon time. For example, today is 2 days after the full moon cycle, but that allowed me time to like cry, get my shit together, and review what I actually wanted to talk about so that it would be a more meaningful episode and it's not just me like forcing myself through it. So we're gonna reduce to 1 episode a month rather than 2. I'm still sticking around. This is still something that's very valuable to me and that I want to spend my time doing. I'm just trying to find the best way to do that with sure footing and energy that is aligned so that it's meaningful. You know what I mean. Also, like, releasing it around the full moon is like when I'm at my most powerful. So insert evil cackle here. I really value being consistent, and that is something that has been a really big challenge for me around this podcast because I've been struggling with my own consistency and trying to figure out the source of that. So I think it's just that I've been putting far too much pressure on myself to go in way too many directions, and doing too much in all of those directions as well. So rather than missing future episodes, I'm going to reevaluate my own goddamn expectations of myself and hopefully make a lot better content for you guys when I do show up. So What I also think I might do, but don't hold me to this because we all know me, we all know how flighty I can be, but I think I'm going to try to decide on a topic for the month's episode around the new moon time and then cultivate that idea over time. And then that way I can open it up on my social media as well if you guys want to have a discussion around it, or if you have valuable input you want to share or see me talk about in the podcast near the end of the month. So I might do something like announce what the topic is going to be kind of loosely on TikTok or Instagram or something like that, and then that way you guys have an opportunity to be a part of the making of the podcast as well, if that's something that's interesting to anybody, and if not, that's totally cool too. But yeah, I just want to have more of a conversation about it. This month I did that, but by myself, so I chose the topic of imposter syndrome around last new moon, and I have been like building up the episode, and I think it's actually going to be a lot more of a meaty episode because of that, and because I've allowed myself the time to process and think about what I actually want to talk about, and get a little bit of research done too. I know, it's fucking wild. Alright, as always, your feedback about the show, including any topics that you would like to hear me talk about, is always welcome through my socials and email, and you can access all of that in my link tree, which is at the bottom of the show notes. Now on to the most important update, the most prevalent thing to talk about today, and if you don't want to talk about or hear me talk about ecocide and indigenous land defenders and bullshit colonization, you can skip ahead to the second half where we talk about imposter syndrome, especially if you are Indigenous or a person of color. You have no obligation to listen to this. It could be triggering. I'm not going to go into a lot of trauma, but it is going to be current events that are happening at the hands of the Canadian government. So, fair trigger warning. It's about Wet'suwet'en and the Haudenosaunee Alliance, so let's get into it. So we already know that BC is currently experiencing massive flooding, just upheaval, absolute upheaval. Amidst the ongoing climate crisis, and guess who deployed the RCMP to not go help people experiencing hardship from the flooding and evacuating and all of that? No. Let's deploy militarized RCMP with a fucking K9 unit to northern BC to represent the interest of Coastal GasLink's pipeline that violates Wet'suwet'en laws. Sorry, my cat is sneezing in the background. She might do again. You done? Okay. Coastal GasLink's pipeline violates Wet'suwet'en laws. It is being illegally built, and they flew about 50, I think, I don't know the exact number, but about 50 RCMP grunts out, and they have already made several arrests of Indigenous land defenders. I believe they're around 11 to 15 arrests at this point. This includes two Wet'suwet'en elders, as well as, what is her name? I should have put it in here. I think I have it listed further down, but as well as media and legal observers. So yeah, this is not okay. Very much showing their hand in terms of like what the fuck the government's interests are, what any government's interests are. That was never really up for question, but now it can't be denied that they're really out here heavily arming RCMP to go take out land defenders so that they can continue to build pipelines while that particular province is being logged to filth in Fairy Creek, and while other pipelines that have been illegally built all over Turtle Island have caused the fucking climate crisis that we are in now, that is directly impacting the province they just deployed RCMP to. Like, it's fucking ridiculous. The Wet'suwet'en and Haudenosaunee Alliance have called out and asked for all to take action, including settlers, so including myself, anybody who is white, anybody who is listening to this. Please share the information that I have in the show notes. Please share this with anybody you can. The best action we can take digitally is spreading information and ensuring that the shit spreads like a wildfire and they cannot keep it under wraps, because they bank on being able to subdue things with propaganda, or if they subdue enough Indigenous land defenders, then maybe no one will hear about it. It's too late for that now. So please assist in any way you can. If you're financially able to donate, please do that as well. I have a bunch of Instagram and Facebook and Twitter accounts that you can go and check out based on whatever platforms you're active on, and that will have further information from those host sites in terms of how you can assist, and plenty of posts for you to share and post and all that good stuff. So, taking a deep breath, because yeah, they arrested 2 elders. Nobody that they arrested is not okay, but they arrested 2 elders as they were trespassing on their land. Like, Wet'suwet'en is sovereign land. I'm going to read an excerpt from an article, which is also linked, written by Matt Simmons for the Narwhal. The full article is about a 7-minute read, so it's super easy, and I'm going to read a good chunk of it here. The title is Land Defenders Arrested on Wet'suwet'en Territory as RCMP Enforces Coastal Gasling Injunction. Elders, legal observers, and media have been detained as police advance into Yintah territory. I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing, I'm trying my best. Where land defenders closed road access earlier this week in an effort to prevent drilling under a sacred waterway. Chief Wass explained in the statement, now in talking about safety issues, the RCMP is currently blocking kilometer 29 and not allowing any food supplies or medical supplies back up to our camps, our territory, our unceded land, to our people. So not only are the RCMP invading, but they are also preventing resources, and very important resources, from getting to the rest of the folks in their territory. I also want to, pull this together to what Trudeau said a couple of days ago as well. So for those who are not from Canada or aren't aware, he is our premier, whatever the fuck he is, prime minister. The irony and timing should not be lost on anybody that Trudeau just echoed Doug Ford, who is the Premier of Ontario, his words from August 2020 this week. So Trudeau said, and I quote, this is on my TikTok and Instagram if you want to check out the video, "Canada is a major oil and gas producing country. And then he looks at the camera in panic because he fucked up. Yeah, you can go check that out on my Instagram highlights. It's posted on a lot of the Indigenous Land Defender accounts as well. But you can go see him say that for himself. Ford said something similar back in 2020, and so when I looked it up, the quote is, "Close to $1 trillion a trade. We're one of the few companies, or countries, I should say." So this isn't new. Exxon Oil, whatever the fuck they're called. All of this is tied to monarchy. All of this is tied to colonization. Holy shit. And their masks are slipping off. So we already know that the government and political systems we have in place are only meant to protect the rich corporations and continue to exploit and manipulate the public so that they can continue exploiting the earth. However, this slip made it undeniable that the government serves corporate interests above human interests during a literal climate crisis. In case I wasn't clear, land back and Indigenous sovereignty and leadership needs to happen yesterday. We are all on stolen land, and it's beyond time that it is duly returned to its original stewards, with the authority to make the decisions on how we move forward, being fully in the hands of our Indigenous leaders. All the while, we have pipelines, logging, aka ecocide, continues on throughout unceded Turtle Island, all over the fucking place. I've got some petitions and information in my link tree as well. It's a scattering, it's kind of a little bit of everything. However, I encourage you to educate yourself and amplify Indigenous voices and their leadership as much as you possibly can. When darkness comes to light, so does the opportunity to make a different choice. Blow this shit up, make a ruckus, make it impossible for them to cover this back up, and make it impossible for them to continue. At least make it harder. That being said, I also want to wrap this little section up with a bit of radical positivity, because I know how exhausting emotionally it can be to hear about yet more shit going on, and yet more damage being done. There is too much momentum for this to stop now. I know it's overwhelming. I know there is a lot of shit going on, too much to keep count of sometimes, but so many people know. I found these articles and videos with quick Google searches, which means they haven't been suppressed yet. There's a lot that has been, especially if you like Troy Kirby. They're slipping up far too often to cover their tracks well. They're saying shit like the company, they're referring to the country as an oil producing company. That's fucking ridiculous. That's fucking ridiculous. We don't even need that industry anymore. It's just greed. Social media is just that, media. And when the government-funded media doesn't cover the real news, you best believe that Indigenous folks always have stood up to defend the land, but now they have access to social media where they get to use their voices. So I urge you to amplify those voices as you see them, and listen to them when they come across your page. the energy only continues to gain momentum, and it is not your job to convince or convert people who are enmeshed in the lies or who like believe the government is for our best interest. You don't have to convince those people what's going on right now. You don't need to drain your energy engaging with colonizers. Instead, spend your energy looking for and becoming the hope, the solutions, looking for the progress, amplifying the progress, spreading information and resources, and donating and funding. Hey, sorry, my dog just tried to bite Lucy in the face because she's trying to cuddle. Yeah, fuck it, I'm not editing that out. Okay. Don't drain your energy with the colonizers. Instead, look for ways that you can embrace the positive energy and become the positive energy. Listen to Indigenous podcasts, linked in my notes. Follow Indigenous content creators on social media as they come up. Show up as the improvement that you want to see in this world so that it can continue to be reflected back to you. I love you, and we as a collective have got this. The Indigenous side is the side that will win. It already has, and it will continue. The politicians make it easy by literally spelling out their greed for us. Now let's shift gears into a different issue rooted in misogyny, which is imposter syndrome. So, we're gonna read another bit of an article here. I'm gonna read a little bit more than I did in the last one, because it's just so well done. And we're gonna jump into a bit of a rabbit hole here, so hop aboard if you're ready. I decided that I wanted to cover this topic a little bit earlier this month, and I looked it up. I looked up the origination of imposter syndrome as well, because I was curious about maybe like the original definition as well as who named it and why. So we're gonna be referring to an article in the Harvard Business Review, which is also linked in the show notes if you want to read the full thing. It is titled "Stop Telling Women They Have Imposter Syndrome," and it was written by, I'm so sorry if I fuck this up, Ruchika Tulshin and Jodianne Burry. I think that's the pronunciation, but I'm a white guy, probably fucked it up in some way, so if anybody knows the proper pronunciation, feel free to check me. I think they just nailed this in so many ways, so instead of like trying to write my own version of their article, I'm just going to be directly quoting their article for a part of this. And I would also extend this not just to women, but to anybody who doesn't identify as a cis white man. They've probably had a similar experience, as this seems to be very rooted in racism as well as patriarchy. I'm going to jump into the article now. So I invite you to apply this to your overall inner dialogue and experiences, as well as your experiences in like either workplace or your like own home and like environments, every environment you could possibly be in, because this is specifically referring to the workplace, so that's why I'm letting you know to broaden it a little bit. So, imposter syndrome is loosely defined as doubting your abilities and feeling like fraud. It disproportionately affects high-achieving people who find it difficult to accept their accomplishments. Many question whether they're deserving of accolades, and they're usually the people who are like doing a bunch of shit and earning a bunch of accolades, and they're like still thinking that they're going to be called out. Talisa Lavery was exhausted. She had led the charge at her corporate event management company to plan a high-profile, security-intensive event, working around the clock and through weekends and for months. Barack Obama was the keynote speaker. Lavery knew how to handle the complicated logistics that were required, but not the office politics. A golden opportunity to prove her expertise had turned into a living nightmare for her. Lavery's colleagues interrogated and censured her, calling her professionalism into question. Their bullying, both subtle and overt, haunted each decision she made. Lavery wondered whether her race had something to do with the way she was treated. She was, after all, the only black woman on her team. She began doubting whether she was qualified for the job, despite constant praise from the client. Things with her planning team became so acrimonious that Lavery found herself demoted from lead to co-lead and was eventually unacknowledged altogether by her colleagues, which, like, pause for effect. Yeah. Each action that chipped away at her role in her work doubly chipped away at her confidence. She became plagued by deep anxiety, self-hatred, and the feeling that she was a fraud. What had started as healthy nervousness, will I fit in, will my colleagues like me, can I do good work, became a workplace-induced trauma that had her contemplating suicide. Today, when Lavery, who has since written a book about her experience titled Confessions from Your Token Black Colleague, reflects on the imposter syndrome that she fell prey to during that time. She knows it wasn't a lack of self-confidence that held her back, it was repeatedly facing systemic racism and bias. What's less explored is why imposter syndrome exists in the first place and what role workplace systems play in fostering and exacerbating this in women. We think there's room to question imposter syndrome as the reason that women may be inclined to distrust their success. And I would also expand this to distrusting their competence and their ability in general. The impact of systemic racism, classism, xenophobia, and other biases was categorically absent when the concept of imposter syndrome was developed. Many groups were excluded from the study, that's never happened before, namely women of color and people of various income levels, genders, and professional backgrounds. Even as we know it today, imposter syndrome puts the blame on individuals without accounting for the historical and cultural contexts that are foundational to how it manifests in both women of color and white women. And I would also say, not just women, but people who do not identify as a cishet man. Imposter syndrome directs our view toward fixing women at work instead of fixing the places where women work. And we couldn't do that because then all the white guys would be held accountable. The label of imposter syndrome is a heavy load to bear. Imposter brings a tinge of criminal fraudulence to the feeling of simply being unsure or anxious about joining a new team or learning a new skill. Add to that the medical undertone of syndrome, which recalls the female hysteria diagnosis of the 19th century. Although feelings of uncertainty are an unexpected and normal part of professional life, women who experience them are deemed to suffer from imposter syndrome. Even if women demonstrate strength, ambition, and resilience, our daily battles with microaggressions, especially expectations and assumptions formed by stereotypes, racism, often push us down. Yeah, so it's a systemic thing. It's not unlike, I would just say this is rebranded hysteria. It's oh, you are being impacted by us being shitty at including people who are not white cishet men. It must be a you problem. We're going to pathologize this problem. It doesn't mean that the experiences that folks who identify with imposter syndrome have are not valid. They are valid, but the root cause of this thing is patriarchy and colonization and racism. So right there, I hope that lets you off a really big hook in terms of any guilt you feel for feeling anxiety or imposter syndrome traits in any way, because it was literally they pathologized the normal response your nervous system had to them being shitty and excluding you and making you feel like you had to work harder and over questioning you and isolating you and mobbing you from your team and all of that shit. So it is systemic, it is intentional. The outcome of the intentional systemic treatment of women and women of color and non-binary identifying folks, the impact of that is something they pathologized so that it would be yet another diversion from the actual place that the accountability needs to have. Because even by calling it a syndrome, even by calling it imposter, it's such dark, heavy language to be using, which will make it even harder for folks to reach out because of the context of those words, of that language. So now that we understand a little bit better what this looks like, hopefully you can allow yourself off the hook that you keep jumping onto, because it was literally invented as another way to pathologize women's responses to patriarchal bullshit in the workplace. They want us all to experience this so that we take zero action, or worse, we feel too incompetent to take that action. There's a reason that Indigenous folks and women of color, and women in particular, have always been the target of patriarchy and colonizers. And it's no different than nature being the target of colonizers. Women are brilliant and deeply connected to the earth and each other, and they are the key. They are the leaders. POC women and indigenous folks, as well as two-spirited indigenous folks, are the original and, in my opinion, the supreme leaders, which is why they've been systemically disempowered. Because can you imagine if any of this funny business, I say funny business lightly, would have ever gotten this far, would have ever happened if the leadership wasn't cishet white men, Catholic white men, monarchy, right, exactly, I know you agree. When I sat down to do a brainstorm about how imposter syndrome impacts me and my ability to get things done, I also found some deeply rooted systems of belief that I have to clean up. And it's going to be an ongoing thing, always, just like decolonizing and getting rid of the racism that is within us, or at least fucking working on it and addressing it and acknowledging it. But this also brought up a lot of internalized capitalism, which is still everything else, around productivity and burnout. It brought up fear of failure and ridicule and like fear of like that publicly happening as well. Invalidation, perfectionism, that harsh inner critic voice and negative self-talk that I struggle with, fear of being perceived, wanting to stay in the comfort of the comfort zone so that you don't have to like risk all of that social capital, taking on others' projections or ideas of what you need to be doing or looking like or behaving, fear in general, and self-worth wounding all came up. I realized that I often set really lofty goals for myself, and imposter syndrome came up when I was trying to make any progress towards them. That's kind of the direction that I found this for me. And it also came up in the workplace, but that was mostly just patriarchy. So I'm going to focus more on the executive dysfunction side of it from a neurodivergent perspective, so that hopefully if you're experiencing these traits, we can't necessarily fix the system entirely, but we can fix how we view everything so that we can be gentler with ourselves and find strategies to still show up and take space despite everything in our systems telling us we're not worthy of doing that. So I would set these really lofty goals for myself, and then I would expect that I'm able to just like sit down to accomplish it in like one sitting, whatever the thing is. It's like, no, I should be able to sit down to this in 30 minutes, it's whatever. Has nothing to do with my neurodivergence having a weird sense of time and capacity and the way that tasks need to happen, but that's what it would be. So I would automatically be setting myself up for failure and disappointment. And it took me like this whole year, and it's still not done, but this whole year to recognize that I was essentially saying, okay, Kim, we're gonna climb this mountain. We might have some of the gear we need. We can do this. And then just like running headlong into Everest and like dying immediately, right? It wasn't the right approach, but instead of acknowledging that I could shift my approach, I was like bludgeoning myself for failing. And I think that also lends itself like expanding on imposter syndrome to the ridiculous expectations that we hold of women versus men. Because like men, if you're a man and you're listening, hi, I appreciate you for being here, but like if you're a cis-het white guy and you've made little effort and you're the one who's promoted all the time, like it's not because you're capable, it's because you're moldable, and it's because like they can't possibly afford to have women, especially women of color, in charge in the workplace, because they would be so able to see all the bullshit that's going on. It would all be brought to light and they would be ripping it all apart, and companies can't afford for women of color and indigenous women to be the leaders of these places because they wouldn't be able to continue on the way that they do. Okay, so I would promptly expect myself to be at the top of this mountain or be able to more cat sneezes, that's different cat sneezing. I would expect myself to be able to like climb to the top of this mountain very quickly or in an unrealistic amount of time, but my brain also didn't know how to set a realistic time expectation for myself or how to like break down the tasks that mountain climb would actually look like for me. So instead of finding ways to break it down, I got stuck in like an executive dysfunction shame spiral of like, no, I'm just not capable, I'm just not good enough, blah, 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 which turns into that imposter syndrome type of trait. I don't like referring to it that way because that's the name of the episode. We're going to keep referring to this as a syndrome, but I definitely agree with the writers of the original article that like it's shitty and it's stupid and it's not a syndrome and there's nothing wrong with you. But that's the easiest way to describe this experience for right now. So we're beating ourselves up because we haven't accomplished anything or whatever bullshit we were telling ourselves, because setting a goal is an accomplishment. Deciding you're going to do something different is an accomplishment. The part that I was missing is that I didn't know how to approach and break down the steps required to climb this mountain. So it's not that you can't achieve or climb the mountain, it's that you've never done it before. So you not only have to learn as you go, but you have to teach yourself what steps would be required, and then learn how to do each of those individual steps so that you can actually begin to be equipped to approach the mountain, right? 1 second, I'm just going to shift to the next recording. All right, we're back. So you don't have to know how you're getting to the top, and you don't have to take anything more than inspired baby steps. No matter how tall the mountain is that you see, no matter how much bigger it might actually be, or how much smaller it might actually be based on your perception of the thing, could be related to your experience of dysfunction around how do I break this down? How do I make this bite-sized for myself? And when you've not done that before, you don't get to beat yourself up for not knowing how to do it. And like, I am excellent at beating myself up for that kind of shit, but you don't have to do that. And I think feeling anxious or fearful is a sign that we're on the edge of our comfort zone. It's a sign that like our inner being and who we are, we're kind of nudging ourselves in this direction to go and fly. And when we feel uncomfortable, it might be because we've already been like pushed right off the cliff, but it could also be because our wings need a second to unfurl, or we need to finish hatching first, or we need to take a little peek over the edge so that we feel comfortable with how far we're going. And what if the fear is just a response to the unknown? And the fear has kept you safe before. It's something we can appreciate because it's kept you alive. Fear keeps us alive. But when fear is our dominant response, or it's the state that our nervous system has been in for so long because of survival and all of this shit, it makes it harder to make intelligent and informed decisions that you actually want to make. And sometimes when we're stuck in fear or like even a fight or flight response, the decisions we make can't always be trusted because that's just the lizard brain moving forward for us rather than our whole self, right? And it's not because you're not whole, it's because like someone else is driving the ship and you need to like bring that back before you try to take action. And what if it turns out so much better than your ego thinks it will, or than the fear has told you that it will, or that it has in the past? I think that instead of compounding the feeling that you're an imposter waiting to be found out or discovered or called out as the fraud, taking these feelings as a cue to first dig a little bit deeper into what questions you have. What unknowns can you resolve for yourself? How can you support that fear and not feed it, but balance it out by giving yourself some knowing, giving yourself some understanding, learning. It's kind of like, I think this is a thing. It might just be me, but I think it's a neurodivergent thing that we just want to jump in and know everything. And it's because we're capable of learning really quickly on our feet and that pattern recognition and all of that, but like, that doesn't mean that you don't deserve to take the time to learn first and figure it out first a little bit and plan a little bit. You don't have to rush in and then panic the whole way through. For example, when I first decided I wanted to do a podcast, I didn't consider all the steps that go into prep. I had no idea. They go into prep, writing, recording, adding video, putting it up somewhere. Like I'm just gonna make a podcast, it'll be fine. And it would be like I would sit down at my computer and then just beat myself up because I didn't know what to do, or didn't know where to start, or what platforms to look at, or what to record with, what to fucking talk about, whatever, right? But I would be like, okay, well, I'm sitting here at my computer, why haven't I made the thing? Why haven't I done the thing? And that can be anybody's experience with anything that they're interested in doing. And it was because I needed to take a fucking second and figure out what my brain needed to formulate this in a way that worked for me. And what questions did I have that were unanswered that would reduce some anxiety if I could take the time to answer those for myself, or to seek those answers, or practice, or learn. So I would beat myself up if I didn't produce what I wanted to produce or create whatever, like in any aspect of my life. But I'd actually just skip the part where I sit and brainstorm, or God forbid meditate on what I think I should be doing, or what would be the most meaningful use of that episode, or my time, or my energy that day. It was just, no, you're making this, and now it has to be at the same level as everybody who's been doing it for 5 years. But that's not the case. That's just comparison, and that is the thief of joy, and you don't have to do that. So no matter what things you're chewing over in your mind that resonate for you around the feelings of imposter syndrome, just know that comparison could be a really big aspect of it, and you do not have to. And I encourage you to stop comparing yourself to others and what they've accomplished. You can use that to inspire you, but the second that makes you feel bad, I need you to disengage from it, because it's going to keep you stuck, and it's going to be another bird in your cycle of shame in your brain telling you that you're not good enough, when it could instead just be inspiring you. Look at what someone else is doing. That's amazing. I could be doing that then. If they can be doing that, I can be doing that. And reframing that is hard when you're in a survival mode or when you're struggling or in a cycle. So please just be gentle with yourself, no matter what stage you're at. Sometimes we're not able to even reframe. Sometimes we just gotta step away from it. We just gotta disengage and stop adding fuel to the fire. So I thought I would formulate some questions and some reframes to kind of help you work through this if this is something you're struggling with around shame and guilt spirals and your aspirations and your goals and whatever you want to do that you're like, I feel like a fraud. I also want to address your self-worth and value that will hopefully help you to climb down from that hook a little bit easier. 1 second. Alright, I think we're good. I apologize for the sloshing sounds. I don't yet have an enclosed space where I can record privately. Hopefully I will very soon. But my water dish is close by and Lucy is on steroids. She's extra thirsty. I think she's settled now. You might hear her click-clacking a little bit in the background. Okay, so this one might be familiar for the first question, but how would you support a child trying to meet the same goal that you were? So if a kid came up to you and said like, yo, I want to start a podcast, or I want to go be an artist, or I want to go climb Mount Everest, whatever it might be, I need help, would you be like, okay, well I better bully this kid into figuring it out, and I better force them to skip their basic needs like meals and breaks because they're not worthy of that unless they produce something, and maybe I'll push them around a little, and maybe I'll show them a lot of other people who are doing the same thing and tell them that they shouldn't bother making a thing their way because people have already done it. People have already made art. You'd better be saying no. You better not treat a kid like this. And that being said, you better not treat yourself like this either. You deserve better than that treatment. You deserve to take the space and to honor your body as you are learning the thing and doing the thing, and you don't need to run yourself fucking ragged to be worthy of the thing. If a child came to you with this beautiful, intricate thing that they want to become or create, you would hopefully encourage the shit out of them and see where they might need support and help them with that in a gentle way. Allow yourself that space to break down your goal and to research the thing you're wanting to do if that's required, and its steps, and like how other people are doing it. Learn from others. Allow that to inspire you to expand your view of what this can be as well. And whatever you want to do, it's okay to break down the steps, and it's okay that that's a step of that is going to be sitting down and identifying what the steps are. I'm so sorry for her playing along. Can you please sit down, man? Please. Begging. I don't know if you can see. Yeah. If you're seeing the video of this, is beautiful. She just give me the eyes, but can you please lay down? Maybe? No, you choose violence, don't you? Okay. Hopefully we'll have some minimal interruptions, but let's go. I found I would get stuck in rabbit holes trying to figure out the steps to do a thing because I was like trying to do it all from my brain, and I found out that doesn't work for me. I'm very visual, I'm very tactile. I need to write it. I need to, and not type it, I need to write it. So I can't just expect myself to sit at a computer and do the thing that I want to do. I need to first give myself that space. And so I encourage you and invite you to think about what you need to be able to focus, what you need to be able to comfortably move ahead, and even like allow your brain that time to process your new goal or whatever you're trying to step into. I would be overwhelmed from like trying to take 15 minutes to get a thing done only to realize that like 3 or 4 other steps were needed, and then it would pile up. And that's because I approached the mountain from the middle instead of the fucking bottom. I'd be like, okay, well I need to, if I'm gonna be an artist, then I better go get a website started. I better go get all these things done. When I could actually have slowed down and been like, what kind of art do I want to make? Who do I want to reach? Who do I want to make the art for? Who do I want to see this? Why am I making it? Like, that's what I could sit down and write about, and like that's what you could sit down and write about. Or whatever works for you. But is the thing you truly want to be doing this thing? Or is the thing you're trying to do or force yourself to do right now lining up with somebody else's ideas, expectations, or projections of you and what you should be doing with your time? Ensuring that you're not performing or doing something that you actually don't want to do is kind of important. And sometimes the feelings of not being aligned with something and anxiety and imposter syndrome traits can overlap and look very similar. So it's important to check in with yourself and understand emotionally, how do you actually feel about this? And is this something you want to be doing? Or is it a natural fear response because you're stepping out of your comfort zone? Sometimes, if we must do the thing we don't want to do, it's okay to still take that time to stop and calibrate our energy a little bit. And what if it's a thing you don't want to do, what's the minimum energy required to get the thing done while still honoring your own needs? How can you meet all of the things that you need to do, especially like capitalist shit, like going to work or going to all these places, grocery shopping, whatever? How can you do this while honoring your needs? And can you multitask your dreams while you're doing the thing you have to do? So for example, if you have to go to work, for example, and you're like, fuck this job, I don't want to be spending my energy here. Okay, are you allowed headphones? Can you put on a podcast or an audiobook or whatever about the thing you're interested in or want to learn about, so that you can multitask a little bit while you're spending energy doing something you don't want to do? You can still be taking in energy about the thing you're interested in. That's just one idea that just popped up, but like, how can you layer on the things so that you're making the best use of your time, especially when it's something you don't want to but have to do? And if it's something that you truly want to be doing, and it's not like about filling someone else's expectations of you, and you feel icky, maybe it's just because the energy isn't lined up. Maybe you're acting a little bit too soon on the thing. Maybe you're approaching the top of the mountain when you need to be at the bottom of the mountain, or still like mapping the mountain, right? You don't just show up to Everest. You don't just show up to Everest, and you probably have really big goals and dreams, and you're fully fucking capable of aligning with them and of meeting them, but you don't have to use just like brute effort to get there. So if you're feeling like you may be acting too soon, that could also be that like anxiety in your stomach. That can also be the like, and even like the procrastination. Procrastination is protection. And to me, I take it as like, I'm not fucking aligned right now. If I feel like I cannot handle this, if I feel like I'm like in this energy of procrastination, it's because I shouldn't be doing the thing. It's because I either have other needs I need to meet for myself, other responsibilities, or other ways I need to be spending my time that would better meet my meat suit's needs. And that might mean rest. That might mean just sitting the fuck down. That might mean video games. Whatever that looks like for you, if you're feeling that split energy when you want to go do something you're excited about, or maybe not excited about, versus like knowing you want to do the thing, but feeling like you fucking can't, listen to that, and listen to that why, and be inquisitive with yourself around that. You're allowed to find out more about that. So if you feel like you're acting too soon, or like you're stuck, are you perhaps trying to rush ahead to the end result of the thing, but you haven't let yourself plan it, or you haven't let yourself fully imagine it, or what it could look like, or what you want it to look like for yourself, like how you'll do the thing? Because anybody can be an artist, but no two artists are the same, right? So it doesn't matter how other people do the art. It matters how you want to do art. What do you want to work with? Sorry, my cat's now scratching my furniture. It is chaos today. My chair's squeaking. It's fucking anarchy. All right. An example of this, for me, is that I spent many hours stressing myself out over having the right website. Which website is the one I should use? How should I design it? What should I put on it? How do I want to sell my art? Should I make prints? Should I make coffee cups? Should I make a fucking calendar? Who knows? I was just sitting there like burning my brain out trying to figure it out, when I hadn't sat myself down to be like, what kind of art do I want to make? And why? It doesn't matter how you want to manufacture it or how you want to capitalize on your dream. That's not the important part. That's like a later end game thing. What's setting your soul on fire? What's inspiring you? What do you want to spend your time doing? And then let yourself imagine what that looks like for you. Before I even gave myself permission to take the time to do the art, I was sitting here burning myself out over how I'm going to sell the art. Because it's not worthy unless I'm gonna capitalize, right? It's not worthy unless I can make money in some way and monetize the thing, because then that proves that it's a worthy way of spending my time. And therein lies the shitty belief, and that's probably not one that's just mine. I was too focused on what needed to be in place in order to monetize myself, rather than giving myself space to create, which was the whole reason that I wanted to create, was for the sake of creating, right? And expression, and being authentic, and Instead, I just like went into an executive dysfunction burnout shame cycle because I was like, well, I don't have all the things together for the means of production. And it's like, fuck the means of production. Like, I'm just satisfied that I'm making art. I'm just satisfied that I'm sitting here talking to you guys, that I'm taking the space to use my voice to hopefully fucking help somebody else out of similar shit that I've experienced. Is this the thing you think you need to do? Is it lined up with your heart? Or are you doing what you think you're supposed to be doing next? Like, are you kind of masking in terms of how you're moving forward? If it's non-inspired action, or if it doesn't feel authentic to you and you can avoid it, wait. Don't do it. Like, I don't want you to never do the thing, but if the thought of part of this is just giving you dread, or doesn't, like, you just want to procrastinate, you just don't want to, if you can afford to not do it, don't do it. And wait. And maybe rest a little bit. Maybe give yourself some more energy. Maybe go have a meal. And have some quiet time, have some reflective time, and the solutions will come to you. You might be like, oh, okay, well, I can't figure out the right website, for example, again. And 8 hours later, I could be finally sitting down and doing nothing, and a little thought could pop into my head. Or I might see an ad for a website that's like, oh, this is way better. This will be exactly it. This will have all the features that I'm looking for. That can't come to you when you're in a very stressed, like, tightly wound state. Sorry, tightly wound. I'm showing you my cat on my lap here. Winding up tight. Yes, you. Yeah, like, I don't want to sit and do web design. I hate it. I hate technology a lot of the time. It's very useful. I appreciate that it exists, but, like, I fucking hate working with it. Maybe. But there are several other things I could be doing that might feel better to me that still line up with my overall goal. And so, regardless of what your goal is, the next step here is, how can you break it into categories so that you can allow yourself to move around to different things, and it's not like, well, the only way I could possibly be an artist is if I figure out web design today. No. No, that's just like in Mint. That's just one fucking category. You could go do a million other things that still make you an artist. And whatever you are, I keep using these examples because they're my own, but like, whatever you identify with, whatever your goals are, you already are. You already are that thing. Because you want to do the thing, that means you're the person who's going to do the thing. So that makes you an artist, that makes you a creator, that makes you whatever the fuck. So no amount of work or not work will take away that title, will take away that validity. So breaking down the categories of the work, or of the goal, or the steps even, and the energy output that you think might be required for those types of categories, or the different tasks or aspects of those categories, can be really helpful in order to reach your dream, as well as approach it in a really balanced way and approach it in a bit more of an intuitive way. And the reason for this is an artist can't just be like creating all the time, though I would love to be. They need to have a set time at the same time to actually create. So you can't be like, I'm an artist, I can't create all the time, so I better just like do a lot of social media and do a lot of other things. Like, no, you can still give yourself the space to create and just be free and flow. I try to break down my categories a little bit more broadly, and broadly enough that I have a choice without overwhelming my brain with like 17 choices. It could be like 5. So I typically like assess the type of energy I need to do the thing, which is what I was even talking about in the show updates with the podcast, introducing it to once a month rather than twice a month because it wasn't fucking working. And so instead of beating my head against the wall, we're going to do something else. We're going to better use my energy to still do the podcast, but do it in a better way. So assessing the energy that you need to do the thing. So for example, I've got some category here that I'm going to share, and I'm going to list some little tasks or activities that could fall into those categories. And so then the way I approach it is, okay, these are the categories for this dream or for this goal or whatever the case may be. In this case, it's kind of around my creative world that I have. Here are all the things that I could do, and here's the type of energy that would go into doing these things, so that based on the number of spoons I have that day, based on the level of energy, whether I want to be seated or standing, whether I want to be running around or laying down, all of that impacts. And so I can choose from those categories where I'm at. And then I'm still making strides, I'm still making progress, even if it's just rest, that's okay, while not overwhelming myself. So here are some categories. Creating. That includes art, writing, crafts, whatever. Play, which is like free time art, like do whatever the fuck I want, and work on whatever projects I want. Time with friends, time alone, time in nature, playing with my animals, dancing. The next category would be like home or family work. So that for me includes animal care, cleaning, cooking, making sure I'm eating, all that good stuff. And it's important to put that shit in there, like especially if you struggle with executive dysfunction, put into your routine the time to meet your needs. It's fucking groundbreaking, I know, but it's also life-changing when you give yourself permission to categorize the fact that you are a human and you need a bunch of things in order to function as a human well. Okay, digital work as well. So for that would include my podcast prep. So that could be like writing, researching, whatever, recording tarot readings, engaging on my Discord, social media management, which is like for me, posting maybe a couple times a week. It doesn't have to be daily. It does not have to be 4 times a day. It doesn't have to be anything. Fuck an algorithm. Post when you have the energy to. Post when you feel inspired to, just as a side note. And then the last category is learning. So that could be expanding my interests, learning about new things, letting myself go down little rabbit holes of my special interests, or trying to learn about or find out more about my current goals, my current category, whatever the fuck is going on. There might be a project I want to do some research about, right? And letting myself go in different directions, kind of like unhinged, just learn. Go learn something, go read something, put on an audiobook, whatever. It can also be goal setting. And then, sorry, not my last category, this one is replenishing. So this includes self-care, spiritual stuff, alone time. If you are a projector in human design, or you are somebody who masks a lot, alone time should be built into your day, like uninterrupted alone time. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk, that's all. Alone time is so important, and the reason that I set these categories up this way is so that I can essentially have a menu I can choose from based on how I'm feeling in that moment, at that day. And if I'm exhausted, but I have a creative itch I want to scratch, I can still find a way to progress towards my goals and do that in a way that doesn't exhaust me and doesn't deplete my resources. So if I'm exhausted, but I'm like, I want to create, okay, well, what do I have for options? Okay, I can sit and draw. I can grab some markers. I got a little pouch of markers. Like, what do I have that I can go sit down with and relax with? Or what can I take up to my bedroom? Or what can I, whatever, so that I'm still giving myself the time and space to work on the thing I want to work on without putting on the pressure of like, it needs to be this, or you need to also show up on social media and do this and this and this. And that's just capitalist culture that's internalized in me that I've got to get rid of. But we all have that inherently because it was bred into us, it was socialized into us to feel like what we're doing isn't worth doing unless it's being monetized right now, and it's just, yeah. So categories help with breaking down the goals as well as giving you the choice and the autonomy and giving you the sovereignty back so that you're not, like, for me that helped with my oppositional defiant issue because I was like, well, no, I don't care that I told myself I have to make these things. I'm not making another podcast episode. It's not fucking happening. It's gonna be trash if I do it, blah, 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 and I'll go off. And instead of that, I could just be like, well, I still want to create, but I don't have the energy or the spoons to come up with and write a podcast episode and put that together. But I do have the energy to paint, or I do have the energy to read. Like, what do you want to be doing with your time rather than pressuring yourself, especially pressuring yourself to align with your goals and your dreams, because those are beautiful things that you want to see come into your experience, and then like bludgeoning yourself about them is not going to help. And then eventually it might make you feel so shitty about them that you either feel like a fraud, or you're so angry about the thing, or pushing yourself in the way that you're pushing yourself that you don't do anything, or you give up, or you leave it. And that's what I'm trying to avoid. I'm trying to encourage and give you the tools that might help so that you don't give up. And even if you put it down, it's not giving up. But that you're gentle enough with yourself that you can associate the experience of working towards something you're dreaming about with a positive set of emotions. That is the goal. And like, it does not happen every time for me, but that is the goal. I also think that beyond just giving you the choice of what aspect of the mountain you want to approach that day, it gives you the reason that I have the categories this way helps to approach it, because like if we go back to the Everest example and you haven't eaten that day, oh my fucking god, there goes my vacuum. 1 second. Truly every interruption that could happen has already happened, so whatever, we're rolling with it. I'm glad y'all are here. Thank you. I'm not a professional. I think that's very clear. I'm not a professional at this, not my jam. But we're doing it, and it's authentic. And I think there's a reason that I'm doing it this way. And I think there's a reason that there are so many interruptions in my shit, because like, keep going, even if it's a fucking garbage fire sometimes, you know? So, if you haven't eaten that day, and you want to go climb Everest, you can't be like, well, I better strap on my boots and shit and put all my equipment on my back and start climbing. You're gonna collapse. So the reason that I have replenishment as a category and self-care in there and all of that is very intentionally, because it will help me check in with my own self and my own body's needs before I try to tackle something like a mountain. And I encourage you to do that as well. Like, what are your basic needs? Have you ensured they're met? Is your cup filled? Okay, now you may proceed. And by putting those into the categories of my actual, like, what I like spending my time to do, when I put those categories in there as well, it's kind of acting as like a checkpoint, so that when I come to be like, okay, I'm gonna come create something, what do I want to create? Okay, well, have I eaten? Am I hydrated? Do I have all these things? Where do I want to spend my time doing this? Like, do I need to be sitting up in a chair? Do I need to be laying down? Do I need to be on a couch? Whatever that looks like for me. And then I can go, okay, how can I nest? And this is a very like autistic thing to do, which is nesting, but how can I set up whatever environment I'm going to be in optimally, so that I have all my needs met, I'm comfortable, I don't have to move if I don't want to, and I have all of the tools or supplies required for me to do the thing that I'm interested in doing. Yeah. So, I feel like I'm absolutely useless if my cup is empty. I'm sure I'm not the only one, but sometimes running on an empty cup over and over and over and over again, especially if we have to with like needs and capitalism and all that shit, that's the recipe for burnout, right? Which is why I'm like emphasizing this a little bit right now, is because like, even though you can move forward without eating or drinking enough or taking your meds on time, or if you have meds like that, or even like play and stretching and time alone and whatever, if you move forward without all those things, or enough of those things are missing enough times, that compounds. And then it's gonna be, that's its own mountain to climb, is coming back from burnout, right? And you can't just be like, okay, I'm functioning now, and you're not just gonna ever come back to where you were before, but starting small with the baby steps of like, okay, well, before I sit down to do this, maybe I'll fill up my water bottle again. Maybe I'll top it up. Maybe I'll grab a quick snack. Maybe I'll grab a snack that like, isn't gonna be dirty if I'm gonna be drawing, for example, so that I can just like keep grabbing food if I'm hungry, but I'm not gonna have like jam hands or something. That's why I'm talking about this, is jam hands. There are no rules, and you are exactly on track. Sometimes filling your cup is all you're gonna accomplish that day. Oh, she's finally down. Oh, it's amazing. I don't know if this mic is sensitive enough to pick up her little snores, but I hope so. Because if it picks up her click-clacking and her slish-sloshing and my vacuum, it should pick that up. Oh my god. I don't think I can zoom in from this side, but like, she's so fucking cute right now. Okay, anyway. If I talk about her, she'll wake up. Okay. Focusing. I go on my own tangents. Can you imagine if I had a co-host? Like, we would never be done. It would be like 4-hour episodes. Okay. I also found that giving myself choices on a menu helped me slow down. Slowing down me? Never. And focusing my energy before jumping in. As well, it eased a lot of my defiance around feeling obligated to do something because I had that choice. Or a lot of things that I didn't want to do. And so I could also break them down and approach other shit so that the things I didn't want to do didn't feel like big mountains. It would be like, okay, well, this is just one aspect of the thing, but it doesn't stop me from being the thing or doing the thing today. It allowed me to redefine how I spent my time, as well as help me learn to soften my self-talk. Kind of gives you perspective before you even start. If you're like, okay, well, what am I gonna work on today? Okay, great. Cool, if I do this for 15 minutes, done, good enough. And then anything else is just bonus. Like setting really low expectations, avoid disappointment, but also set yourself up for fucking success. And if you do small little bites, you might keep going. And you might find that you're more energized from that because you're like, wow, I already accomplished a thing. Now I have some dopamine because I accomplished something and I'm not beating myself up to hell. Cool, now I can go do another thing. Or maybe now I'm gonna go cook something. or like wash my dishes, or change my laundry, or whatever the thing might be. Setting yourself up for success sets you up for chemical success in your brain, and more of that comes from meeting your needs and from meeting your goals. So it's okay that you don't need to make the accomplishment of your goal climbing the whole mountain in day one. It can be a big, broken up journey. It's all a journey. You're never going to get there. It's never done. And as soon as you achieve one thing, your dreamy, beautiful, creative brain is going to come up with the next beautiful thing it wants to do. It's not about the thing, it's about the creating of the thing. So finding ways to enjoy that is what's most crucial here. It's a great way to reduce your mental clutter as well, by like sitting down and categorizing or compartmentalizing somewhere on paper, because then you can take that out of your brain, so you're not constantly trying to remember all of the possible tasks cycling in your brain of the thing and to get the thing done. Or, oh, I need to make sure I search about websites and this and this and this and this. And then you sit down to create and you're just stressing out because of all the things you're trying to hold in your brain about a different category, when you could just allow yourself to sit down and maybe brain dump that in one spot. The thing might need a lot of possible tasks in order to complete it from a lot of different categories, but with less brain work required to hold that task or hold those categories in place, that will give you more energy, especially more mental energy, to function, executively function, and to meet your needs and to approach some of these little tasks, and to even feel like you have the energy to sit down and work on this thing that you're passionate about. This also allows you to, it's kind of like giving yourself a job description for whatever the goal is that you have, because it's written down. You can be like, okay, I'm gonna decide that I'm gonna go sit down and do this thing for a little while. And then you can pull out your little menu or your brain pad or whatever you've got going on and just decide what you wanna look at that day. And do the thing that feels the best. Like, that's so nice, that sounds so nice. And it doesn't work that way every time, I promise, but like, you don't need to finish a painting or come up with a fucking successful podcast in a week or record, post, and engage in social media every single day or several times a day. I don't have to do that, and neither do you. Also, some days you may only have energy to keep yourself and or your family alive, and that is enough. That is enough. You already won just by waking up and breathing. All you have to do to be a successful human being is exist. You're already doing that. What you do with beyond that is magnificent, but so is the breathing. So is just being here. You don't need to produce anything to be worthy. You don't need to complete anything to be worthy. Are you comparing yourself or your creations or your goals or your progress to somebody else's? You have every right to take up space just as you are, exactly as you are, and there is room for you no matter what you're interested in or what stage of growth you're in about the thing. I know I keep saying the thing, I hope it's working. Give yourself permission to take up the space that you deserve in whatever, like if it's, I'm a creator, I'm an artist, I'm a tarot reader, I'm a fucking farmhand, whatever it is, give yourself permission to take up the space. There is room for you, because nobody has done it the way you will. Nobody. And try your best not to shrink yourself during that process. I struggle with that all the time. I do that all the time. I've done that on this podcast several times, probably even today. Try not to shrink yourself or your worth or the validity of your presence when you're showing up and taking space. Even if it's just allowing yourself to research the things and what steps that might entail. Just giving yourself the space to be like, I'm gonna take 15 minutes and I'm gonna go Google some things and I'm gonna find out some answers so that maybe I'm a little bit less anxious about this thing, so that maybe it's a little easier to process and to approach. And that usually helps reduce a lot of fear, because the fear is sometimes just a culmination of unanswered questions, of what ifs, right? And when you can tell yourself, okay, well, it's actually just these things I have to do. That's not so bad. I can do that. I can break that down even more, right? Like, it helps. So giving yourself the time and the space to learn and expand your own understanding of whatever your goals are can be huge right there. Like, every time I've stopped to learn, I have been better for it, and I have found solutions to problems that I either didn't know I had or that I had been warring with for a really long time. So breathe, slow down, give yourself permission. That's an opportunity. Researching, thinking, writing, allowing yourself to dream and envision and plan, they're all opportunities for you to take your inner child's hand and lead them out of fear and walk with them through this process. Like, go be the guy they needed. Go be the adult they needed. When you have a dream, it's usually something that was cultivated with your inner child, right? Or something maybe you've had since childhood that you want to do or see. So be gentle with them. Be the guy that they needed when you didn't have someone when you were a kid and you were expressing, if not, or expressing your dreams or what you wanted to do, and people were like, yeah, no, you're not, or adults were like, you're not being realistic, and you're like 7, fuck them. But now you get to go back and be like, okay, say your childhood dream was to be an artist. Now you get to go, cool, we're gonna be the best goddamn artist we ever thought we could be. And we're gonna do it in the nicest way to ourselves. We're gonna do it well fed. We're gonna do it well hydrated. We're gonna do it well fucking rested. We are not burning ourselves out for this shit. And we're not gonna burn ourselves out with negative mental self-talk all the time, because we deserve better. I encourage you to show yourself that compassion and allow inner you to move forward and towards the things that inspire them the most. If all else fails, this is my last one before we wrap up, remind yourself that doing the thing will most likely upset the colonial patriarchal systems in some way. And that alone is reason enough to do anything. And you can do the thing scared. Self-love, self-compassion, creativity, resting, these are all very radical actions in a world used to capitalizing on the impression and insecurity of the collective, as well as exploiting our labor and time and making us too exhausted to have time for these things. Action doesn't have to be big. There is no due date to your dreams. They will come in time. And you are more than worthy of taking up space, my loves. I really hope that this episode resonated with you, and I hope that it inspires you, or reminds you at least, of your intrinsic value and worth. And if it didn't and you need help with it, hit me up and I will aggressively let you know how worthy and valuable you are. Like that, I will Care Bear stare the shit out of you. And if you haven't yet today, please take the time to eat and hydrate and nourish yourself in any way that you can, even if that's just a little bit. I know it's hard. You are deserving of the utmost love, tenderness, and care. I love hearing from you, so feel free to reach out to join this conversation or with any comments or questions you may have for me. The best place to reach me is usually TikTok or email, so I'll see those pretty quickly. However, I'm also Instagram and YouTube for the purpose of this video. So if you'd like me to hear ya, TikTok is the quickest one, but you can go anywhere. I'll just get to it a little later likely. And if you'd like to support me or the making of this show, you can donate on my Linktree or consider joining my Patreon. Keep it real. I love you guys, and we will see you at the next full moon.